Hello, guys. Welcome. This is going to be Dr. Stone, chapter 114 to chapter 118. So I've already pre-read the chapters because there's quite a lot of content to go through. Phone making that notification noise. Just let me turn it off real quick. Yeah. So we start off with 114, and we see Kokaku finding the hidden treasure within the tree. And what she finds is like a concrete ball, and the reason why it's concrete is to kind of preserve what's inside of it. But then the thing is, they can't blow that thing up without making noise. So this is when Senku comes up with a brilliant plan of making a silent bomb, and I was like, what? Because even I didn't know about these silent bombs things. Then we see Senku making this new thing, and then this was like one of the first. This is one of the few moments in this series where I actually learned something quite crazy. It turns out the way these silent bombs actually work is it's just plaster and it uses them to expand. So it was quite interesting actually, the concept of it. I learned something new, so yeah, I got to thank Dr. Stone for that. So yeah, it was quite cool. So you make a hole in the concrete and then you put the plaster in the concrete and it has a force of expansion of 300 kg of power and it explodes from the inside, forcing it to crack open. And then we see a flashback of Senku's dad. And yeah, I don't know. Whenever I see like Senku's dad, I find it pretty cool to be honest. So yeah, that's how it ends. So it was a quite a good chapter indeed. Why did I start there? And then the next chapter, 115, we got the polls. And I've always noticed this kind of trend in every single manga poll I've read so far. The main character is always first, like no doubt. And then second is Nana Ruski. I mean, yeah, I can kind of see why. But to be fair, he's almost a Senku clone in my eyes. Like they're just the same people, but slightly different. Yeah. And then third is Gen. So I was quite surprised by that. I didn't expect him to be that high on the list. And yeah. And with what Kokaku finds inside is a bunch of dust. But what she doesn't realize is the dust is actually what's important. And so she transfers that to Senku and them lot. And it is important because it's sand mixed with gold dust and stuff. And then there's also platinum mixed inside, so that was pretty crazy. And then we see a flashback of the past, and in this part, I was like, this flashback was amazing. I thought, and it just shows the significance of the dust and just the weight behind it, and the way Sengu's dad, what do you call it, collected all that material was by manual labor and sieving. And if you know anything about that, it took him decades and decades to find that stuff. And due to the fact that most of the resource on the planet has already been used up by the humans anyway, so trying to find some now, like, is going to be hard in the modern day because most of it's already been used up. So what he literally did was crazy, to be honest. And it's just crazy, and it kind of hit me in the feels. Just watching Senku's dad just collect what do you call it, residue of precious materials in the lake every day until he dies, because he was planning for the future, and it shows the hope he has for humanity. And he even dies like collecting it, and you see him passed out. But I thought this part was, yeah, spectacular as well. Actually, the imagery that was used. So we just see Senku's dad collapse into the river, with only half of his face looking out. I mean, only half of his face on the surface of the water, and it looks like space because Senku's dad was an astronaut, and he cries, and he that's how he dies. And I thought that was a really good backstory. I thought that was amazing. It really gave such a weight and significance behind the product that they achieved. And then I was like, wow, amazing. So then with that, they acquired the nitric acid and the potion to, what do you call it, what do you call it, no, depetrify them. So with that, they have enough now. I mean, they don't have a lot, but they've got enough. So yeah, with nitric acid, that's what they acclaimed. But then the chief of the village, he seems to now he's quite suspicious of Intruder because of something he found. So what he does is, so that's why the security is a lot more tight, and they see, and then Senku and the gang see their comrades getting thrown into the river. And I thought this was going to be really messy because they're all decapitated as well. I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be crazy. But then that kind of means there was a lot tight on security as well. And they get Rusuke's body because apparently he looked like the leader because he had all the fancy clothes on. And they tie him to a tree. And in order to fish out the intruder, they made everyone attack the statue. And we see one girl chop off Rusuke's arm. And then next is Kokaku, but she's angry at first. But then even she has a bit of brains. And what she does is she completely decimates the statue into small pieces. But what they don't know is she intentionally did it because she used her skill to break it apart cleanly, is what she describes the hits as. So I thought it was pretty clever. And what they do is using the RC like carriage device they've been using, the mouse thing. I think that's quite crazy. They transport all the pieces of Rusuke to Senku's team, and with that they revive him. And I thought that was pretty cool. So Rusuke comes back, the MVP, the first one to get revived. So I was like, yes, because I was kind of iffy. I was getting a bit anxious because he's just been completely destroyed into several bits. But I'm glad he's okay. And then with that in motion in set, they need to get the rest of the gang. So the next priority for them is Kaseki, and Kaseki is the old dude who's the master craftsman, and they need him in order to do anything else. Because with his expertise, he's the main reason why they're able to advance it further. So what? And then because they saw the body get dumped into the river, they go into a river to see if they can find the bodies, but it's just too deep and they can't hold their breaths long enough. So the next invention they create is an oxygen tank. So that was pretty cool. So what they do is they just rip off the vehicle's tank and then they try to fill it with water and stuff. And yeah, this was quite interesting as well. I learned. So they're trying to pump that thing with oxygen, and obviously, the more you press it, the more pressure it has, and it gets harder to pump and pump. And it turns out they've been doing this for a while, with a lot of failures, such as explosions of pressure, because none of them can hold. In the end, they only get two oxygen tanks. So it's Rusuke and what's the other dude's called? The bald dude. They go. And I see Rusuke give him a lot of compliments in this chapter actually, because yeah, they only got 10 minutes as well. hmm He's called Soyuz. That's it. Yeah. So like Soyuz has a quite an impressive photographic memory, and you see Rusuke giving him a lot of compliment about that. So yeah, and because of Rusuke's expert knowledge of the sea, because he is a captain's, yeah, he's an admiral, I think. But he's a man of the sea, so he knows the sea quite well, and he sees a coral. What's it called? A current reef. And because of the current reef, that's where everything is kind of dragged into, and they find the rest of everyone's remains all like gathered in one place. I think that's quite convenient, but I quite like it being that convenient because I didn't like it to get too messy. So with that, they get Tasugi's body, but the problem is his body is completely buried in the seabed, so it's like a struggle to get him out. Oh my god, it's so hot in this room as well today. And then with some quick thinking, they pull the tugs, and because they can't really communicate to each other using verbal communication right now, they just pull the tugs. I mean, they pull the rope, and in the forms of hoping they understand what the situation was. And you see Gen and Senku using their expert analytical skills to deduce what the problem is. And with quick thinking, they throw the revival fluid inside. And I thought this was pretty cool as well. Like there was no hesitation in this. What he does is he takes off his oxygen tank to kind of produce an air bubble in a way to revive Senku. But I'm kind of confused. I'm pretty sure. Actually, never mind. Yeah, I was gonna say like, shouldn't the pressure be quite hard on him? But then I realized he's not wearing any clothes, so I don't think there's that much pressure there. But then they have to revive Taiju to uncover Tasugi because he's buried underneath the seabed. So they need his muscles, right? So he gets revived, and it's kind of funny because Tasuke's like he starts yelling like ah, but then he instantly starts choking on the water because he's underwater. And then with that, and then with the two, they get enough oxygen, and what they do from here is quite interesting actually, because they can't really talk on the water, so they have to use a lot of what do you call it, other forms of communications, and because they know each other quite well, they can communicate with our hearts. That's what they called it. And with that, they all submerge. I mean, they all that's not the word, is it? Not submerge. What's the other word when you come up? I mean, they all come up out of the water and they save Tasaki, but he's in pieces. And this is going to be quite interesting, actually. So that was a good win for everyone. So yeah, that was quite good. So these 4 or 5 chapters that I read, I quite enjoyed them a little bit. So we start to see a bit of progression in the plot. Now we saved one person, and we're going to potentially save another person. And yeah, it's a lot of setup on the Senku side, and I want to see how the battle between the villagers and Senku's team are going to go. And who is this, what do you call it, mystery leader of theirs? We're going to find out as well.